Peace, peace, peace. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. For those of you who don't know, it's your boy Vic Slain Hope, and I got another video for y'all. In today's video, I'm going to be doing another law in the 48 laws of power, and this one is law number 37, which is called Create Compelling Spectacles. Now, before I read the judgment, like I always tell y'all, if you like my content, make sure you give it a thumbs up, you share it with somebody, and you also subscribe to the channel so you can stay in tune, man, to what's going on. Now, the judgment says, striking imagery and grand symbolic gestures create the aura of power. Everyone responds to them. Stage spectacles for those around you, then full of arresting visuals and radiant symbols that heighten your presence. Dazzled by appearances, no one will notice what you really are doing. Now, the story, I'm gonna give y'all a story from, I'm gonna give y'all an example that they use in the book, and then I'm gonna give y'all some personal examples. So in the book, the example that they use in the book was the example of a man that claimed that he used to heal people through the rays of the moon. So he created like this spectacle. He worked out of a hall of like a 2-story kind of like building, and him and his wife kind of like, they had these big windows, and a lot of people used to go there from all over the country or different parts of the world, right, to kind of like get this type of healing from the moon. And he only really worked in the crescents of the moon, right? So what he would do is like when the moon was in its crescents, right, he would kind of like bring people up to the second floor, and he would like fake use the rays of the moon and rub on like the ailing parts of their bodies, and he would mumble something and then like people will believe that they were healed, right? So it was like he played this mind game with them. But what really got people into it was like people seeing other people. When you see the multitudes of people of different ethnic backgrounds and different social class, you tend to probably believe that it is true, right? You heard of the saying, believe none of what you hear and half of what you see, right? So you might hear things about this doctor, but then when you start seeing, when you show up and you see how his office was packed, how it was people all the way lined up all the way to the outside, and it was people, not just rich people, it was also poor people, people of different social economic backgrounds, you kind of like tend to kind of like believe it a little more. Now, so and to my personal story, right, it says create compelling spectacles, right? Dazzled by appearance, no one will notice what you're really doing. I know some of y'all probably tuned into my video, one of my videos, when I was talking about when I went to Stevenson. I used to go to Stevenson High School for suspension, right, in the Bronx. And that whole neighborhood is a blood neighborhood. And I was a Crip at the time, right? So the things that I used, so every time I went outside of my house, I always had crates on. I always either had a flag, right? Again, it goes back to the striking imagery, right? The grand symbol gestures create an aura of power, right? So every time I wore my crates, people are acknowledging this dude is a Crip, right? And the fact that I wore it in neighborhoods that I just really didn't care whether they was Crip or not, or blood. And a lot of times, you know, I live in New York City, so most of the neighborhoods was blood, right? So the fact that I did that, it created this sense of toughness, right? It created this sense of he's not afraid, which in return is a sense of power, right? So a spectacle. Now to the spectacle aspect of this, I told y'all in my story how when I was coming out of school one day, I seen like about 20 bloods on the corner, like right across the street from the Commons, right? I think that's the name of it. And right there, the 39 bus, I was going to get on the 39 bus, and there was a bunch of bloods, right? And they see me with my crates, and when I walk past them, they mumble something, or they say, yo, he Crip, like I heard them, because, you know. So, but I created a spectacle, right? And the spectacle that I created was, I knew I was nervous. I knew my heart was like this. I was even contemplating going the other way. I was like, you know what, do I feel like getting jumped today? You know, because when you've been jumped before, you have these type of inner dialogues with yourself. So when I was before I even walked down the block, I spotted them before they spotted me, right? So when I seen them on the corner, I was just like, you know, I still got a chance to turn around and go around the block, you know? But, and me being the person that I am, I was like, I wouldn't be able to, what's the point of coming out with my crates all the time and coming out with my flag if I am going to be doing sucker shit like this? And at the end of the day, I wouldn't be able to live with it, like sitting in my room. Like I wouldn't be able, I wouldn't feel like a man. I wouldn't feel as powerful. I wouldn't feel as tough if I did that. So anyway, I proceeded to go that way. When I got close to them, they was like, this nigga, this dude crit, like, you know what I'm saying? They said some shit like that. I said, this nigga what? And you know, some of y'all seen that in my story, but that's how I had to do it. I was like, this nigga what? It was just like, it's a spectacle, right? It's just me. It's 20 of them. You frustrate them, right? Not frustrate them, but like you play mental games. Because again, in their mind, it's probably like, it's 20 of us. Why he acting so tough? They probably was like, he probably got a weapon. And I said this in numerous times. It's about playing the game. So because I created this spectacle, right? I dazzled them. I kind of like, it was a moment where like time stood still. Because when I did that, they didn't jump. They didn't run at me. They didn't do nothing. They was just like, you know, like, so on some real shit, if I wanted to run, I had the time to, right? Like in that moment, because when they paused, I just looked at them and I was like, oh, all right. And I kept it pushing. But I'm like this. As I'm walking off, my heart like this. But I'm like, I created a spectacle and I dazzled them to the point where I created this sense of power for myself, right? So that's another example, right? Another example of this, creating of symbolism and striking imagery and grand symbolic gestures, is like the rappers. When the rappers come into the game, they wear jewels, right? They get, y'all know how it goes. They get the jewelry, they get the rings, they get the cars, right? They start flashing money. But in reality, they're really broke, right? Because 9 times out of 10, that money is a loan, right? Isn't that some they give you a little advance money, but a lot of times money is a loan, right? With interest, which eventually you gotta pay back. A lot of these artists, if they was living in the hood, they gotta move, right? So the label might give you money to get you a house, but you gotta return these things. You gotta pay these things back. But us on the outside looking in, it looked like they got money. Why? Because they're creating a symbolic spectacle. Again, words could only do but so much. That's why the saying is, believe none of what you hear and half of what you see. Right? People also run with the quote, actions speak louder than words. So we already know this thing. So a lot of times you just got to show people something. It's like the guys that get the rentals, right? Guys get the rentals. They be driving around in the rentals acting like they got bread, or just showing off money, or getting loans that you got to pay back. And then, you know, they're flossing the money like, yeah, man, you got to get with us. You understand what I'm saying? But you don't really know what's going on behind the scenes. You don't really know what's really happening, but they're creating a spectacle and people are buying into it. Another thing that people do, dazzle by appearances. No one will notice what you're really doing, right? Another thing that people do is, this is why, like, sometimes people will use women. I don't know if y'all seen the video Tap Out. And the video, even though it's a video, in the video Tap Out, they created kind of like this spectacle, this appearance, right? They use these beautiful women, right? Where I can't fully remember the video, but if I'm not mistaken, they use these beautiful women to kind of like rob this precious jewel, right? So you use these women, they create a spectacle. They're so dazzling, they're beautiful, right? They got to the dude. I don't know if they drugged them and they then got the pin to the safe or whatever the case might be. But this is why a lot of times men use women to get to rob other men or to set them up, right? Because women create like this dazzling effect, right? Especially if they're beautiful. If they're beautiful and attractive, they create this dazzling effect that you don't even know what they really up. You don't even know what's really going on because you're so entranced in their beauty and in what's going on and thirsty to get lit, right? That you lose sight that this could be a setup or you could be lined up. So I'm trying to think of another example. Another example that they used was an example of the queen, but I don't really want to get into that. But yeah, so basically creating compelling obstacles, man. People are more prone to believe what they see rather than what they hear. Like oftentimes when you try to explain to people certain things, like if the moon doctor was to explain to the people how he actually healed people with the rays of the moon, like me sitting here and looking out the window and holding you up to the window and rubbing the part of your body that's hurting. If he was actually to try to explain that, he would probably be exposed, right? People will probably be like, yo, you fronting, bro. But The fact that people only saw all of those people that came, and people were talking about how they felt healed and they've been returning to this doctor, it already solidified his position to the point where he didn't really have to explain nothing. But that's the end of the video. Let me know what y'all thoughts are. Like, comment, subscribe, and share, and stay safe. Peace.